Take me out to the ball game.
And now, Twitch It Dolphin Media presents The Joys of Mudville, a look at the current state of baseball. Now here are your hosts, Scott McIntyre, Andy Tom Chesson, and James Christopher.
All right, we're here on The Joys of Mudville, and as you can see, Andy is really preserving the integrity of the show, and now Scott is too, by inspecting their own hands because they're being honest. I guess that means we're going to start with Bumgarner first. What
the hand rub that he got? I just want to say, I paid $40 for a hand massage like that before, and at no point did the dude stare at me in the eyes that long. That was a special moment, and I hope Madison Bumgarner paid him well.
I mean, if we weren't trying to cripple every woman in the country by reversing Roe versus Wade right now, I think a lot of Me Too people would be very upset with the way Dan Bellino handled Madison Bumgarner's digits.
Handled. I like what you did there.
Yeah.
Handled. I get that.
Let's like, it did seem to me almost borderline antagonistic, or the guy just sort of spaced out and forgot what he was doing. Like Andy.
Yeah, because it absolutely wasn't inspecting his hands. He was staring him dead in the eyes the entire time he was doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, like peep show quality stare. Like,
seriously, if you rub my hands like that and you stare at my eyes like that, we're either getting a room or you're buying me dinner. It's one of those two. That's kind of how I look at it. Maybe both. Hopefully both, because I do have two hands and I'm worth it, and they're soft and they're nice. No, man, look, that's an umpire who Dan Bellino is. He was looking for something. He was wanting Mad Bum to look up and make that eye contact. Just give me a reason. Just give me a reason to run you. You know, if you look at Bull Durham, he was waiting for that eye contact moment, and just I could tell in Bumgarner's eyes that he wanted to call me a cocksucker. You know, that was kind of the moment that I saw.
I didn't call you a cocksucker. I said it was a cocksucking call.
You spit on me. You spit on me.
Well, now you're a cocksucker. Yeah, it did feel, you know, because I'm
if
all
you
about
spit on him, it costs more. But anyway, I'm sorry.
I'm all about inspections. I want to know who is doing it right, who's not. I think Cole has figured out how to cheat again, which is probably par for the course. But I want to know, but I also don't want umpires becoming the face of the moment, right? And I also don't want to see the game unnecessarily held up because of that.
It is always a problem, never an exception to what I'm about to say. Is always a problem when you know the name of the umpire.
Always.
There's never a good reason to know the name of the umpire. So they've shown their ass. I mean, if you ask anybody who major league umpires are, they're going to tell you Angel Hernandez, Joe West, CB Bucknor, because that's the guys we hate. And those are the names you know. Dan Bellino might be joining that list at some point. I don't think he made egregious calls behind the plate, but umpires should not make themselves bigger than the game. And that's exactly what it felt like happening. Now, Madison Bumgarner is an easy target for that kind of thing because he is famously a grumpy ass player. He's always mad about something. He's always bitching about something, and he is constantly chirping at the home plate umpire. So if you're going to needle somebody just enough to get them to go over the edge, that's not a far trip for Madison Bumgarner. But Dan Bellino was completely out of line with the way he handled it. And if you look, and I think there's been a few different news clips, that new search, that new inspection of the fingertips might last a second for most umpires.
Yeah.
We're talking about a good 5 to 7 uncomfortable seconds. And that doesn't sound like a long time, but when your normal inspection is a second or less, that's forever. Again, umpires don't need to be bigger than the game. And I think Dan Bellino needs to get that memo.
Yeah, I did feel like, Scott, like, you don't even have to touch the hands, right? Like it's got to be as much as if you see something glinting off the hands, it takes you this long.
Yeah, I mean, look, even if you're grabbing somebody's hands, Andy's right. You can figure out in a couple of seconds whether there's something sticky, whether there's some sticky substance on his hand. I don't know. Maybe he was searching for a sticky substance in places that no man had ever gone before. I don't know. I don't know what they were into, but what they weren't doing was baseball. I know that much. That wasn't that was some in between the game. Man, that was Andy's spot on. It's an umpire looking for something, and when you know their names, unless it's Ed Hockley in football that had the guns.
Scott, there's no Ed Hockley.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like we know
Eric Gregg is not around anymore. Eric Gregg was great, right? He's this big, fun-loving guy that they'd have fun with him about his weight. Eric Gregg was fine. Now you have Angel Hernandez. Look, I will take the ghost of Dutch Renicky or whoever you want to, who I can pull back from eons ago over Angel Hernandez. I mean, I would rather go have a proctology exam while fully awake with somebody that had extremely large digits than to have to watch a game that Angel Hernandez calls behind the plate. It's ridiculous. And then you throw in guys like this trying to make a name for themselves, trying to have his moment in the sun while nobody knows who Dan Bellino is if he's not rubbing the hand of someone that we do know.
Yeah. Well, Andy, sorry, go ahead. Did you have something to add?
No, I'm just saying, so don't make yourself the story. Don't make yourself the story, just like Andy's saying. That's why I love Adam Wainwright. Go rub Wainwright's hands. Yeah. This would have been a better presidential thing, just saying.
I'm just going to keep laughing because I now have the image, and I don't remember what player it was. I think it was somebody on the Dodgers had left a hot dog out on third base for Eric Gregg, who graciously picked it up and ate it.
I love that, man. Those are the stories that we meant. That's the stuff we need now. Of course, now you have COVID regulations to worry about as well.
But we did get a good, I thought the umpire acknowledging to Bassett that he blew a call was a big deal. And Bassett kind of like, I think if we could all just admit that we're human, then maybe this is a better situation than umpires almost being proud of their incompetence when it happens. Like Joe West publicly supporting Angel Hernandez is, well, like Donald Trump publicly endorsing Putin, which is
it's like good cops endorsing bad cops that do bad things and shoot the wrong people. Now that's much more serious than baseball, but it's still the same mindset.
I do want to move on because this topic's going to go a little longer. Andy had made sort of the well-timed allusion to the fact that the way we see women is really under attack in this country. And I'm not getting political on the show because I understand both sides of the argument, but it is, right? It's the reality. And I think it dovetails into the Trevor Bauer situation. And I'm going to leave a lot of my thoughts because that's what my opening for the next Let's Get To is about. I want to point out a couple of things, and I want to talk about what it means, what his suspension means, and what it means if it does get reduced and if he does pitch again. But before we jump into it, I need everybody listening to the show, do not buy into the myth that he was exonerated. He wasn't. The prosecution could not make a case that they thought was a slam dunk enough to convince 12 people that he was guilty. That's all it is. It's a different burden of proof for everything else. So hopefully in a sign that we're maybe starting to respect women a little bit more, Major League Baseball did suspend him for 2 years. Andy, what was your first impression when you saw the suspension?
Probably that it wasn't long enough, but is probably the best that we could hope for if you were rooting for Trevor Bauer to not be pitching in the near term. Because I think the initial press release or initial news that I saw was that they were going to give him time served for last year, and they didn't do that. So it all started as of the beginning of this year. You're taking out 2 of his prime earning years, which I can't think of a better punishment for him and Rachel Luba to not have that $40 million a year income for 2. Basically, he's lost $80 million for bad behavior. And if we are a free market capitalist society, and you can argue about how great an idea that is, that's how you punish somebody like Trevor Bauer, is you hit him in the wallet, and that because he's not going to go to jail. And to Jim's point, decline to prosecute is not the same as found innocent. Matter of fact, we don't do found innocent in our criminal court cases. We do not guilty.
Right.
Which is, like instant replay. It's confirmed or it's upheld. But when it's just upheld, that means we couldn't turn it over. It's the same kind of thing. I think the punishment fit the crime from a baseball perspective. I still am aware that he has I think a civil case pending, at least one. I think there's another person who's come out now since all this, claiming that similar behavior has happened in his past. So it couldn't happen to a nicer person, I guess is the best way to put it.
Scott,
so that's a big question. But what Andy just brought up, that brings, if we liked Trevor Bauer before this, how would we treat Trevor Bauer now? I would hope that we treat him the exact same way based upon what we know.
I had very little, I would say this for me, I had very little opinion on Trevor Bauer other than I didn't like that he was constantly needling the Astros when it was very clear that he was also doing something to a baseball. You don't dramatically increase your spin rate by sheer will, which is what he was claiming. And you know, he's on the other team, didn't like him. I didn't have a whole big opinion of him though. But if Jose Altuve, if Carlos Correa, if George Springer were abusing women and having sex with unconscious women and then claiming there was no issue with it, I wouldn't like them either. So
she wanted that. He's really a confusing individual. First of all, so there's things we got to lay out. You guys are exactly right. They couldn't bring a criminal case. They couldn't prove criminally that O.J. Simpson killed Nicole Brown Simpson, but in a civil suit, O.J. had to pay a lot. Exactly. Right? The burden of proof is less. Major League Baseball also separating itself. Let me rephrase that. Major League Baseball and the Players Union agreeing previously to say, okay, just because someone is found not guilty or because a case isn't brought doesn't mean that we can't still judge the evidence for ourselves. Now, we don't have all of the evidence. We don't have all of the testimony. What we do know is pretty damning. And Trevor Bauer has not gone out and made any favors for himself by, tweeting to Deshaun Watson after everything he's been through. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
That's not the most intelligent thing that you can do if you're, when you're in I've always been taught when you're in a quandary, when things are stacked against you, just keep your mouth shut, put your head down and push through it. Don't stand up and make yourself even bigger of a target.
Point, Scott, I hate to cut you off, but to your point, you can continue after this, but he's actually never denied most of the allegations.
Right. Like he doesn't see anything wrong. He honest to goodness, from what I see. So this is the thing. If I put myself in Trevor Bauer's head, that's what they wanted. That, I choked her during, God, we're not talking baseball now. We're talking rough sex and choking her out.
Like I said, but opening, and I don't want to, undercut my opening, and I want to give you guys as much of a forum, but none of us, I think, are sitting here with our pearls clutched because, oh my God, how dare people like something other than missionary position in the bedroom. That's not what we're saying.
Exactly.
We're not judging anybody that does anything else, but to your point.
Yeah, but that is what happened. And in Trevor Bauer's mind, I think he truly, honestly believes that nothing wrong occurred. And when you have somebody that doesn't see things like the majority of people do apparently see things, and like Major League Baseball with a 324 game suspension saw things, if you don't see things that way, if you truly believe your own bullshit, you're a dangerous person at that point. And I think that's kind of where he's at now. Look, I think it's great that he's appealing this. I really do. I'm glad that Major League Baseball decided what they decided with the 2-year suspension. I think it's fantastic that Trevor Bauer is going to get his day in court, so to speak, with an arbitrator who's going to come in, and Major League Baseball is going to have to show that arbitrator, a neutral third party. Mm-hmm. Here's the evidence we have. Here's what we've got. And then, you know what? If Major League Baseball has overreacted by some means, but if they have something in their testimony that they aren't sharing with us, far be it from Major League Baseball to ever do that, Yankees letter. But if that's the case, then good. Let an arbitrator call that out. Let's exonerate Bauer. If there's something in there and everybody's making something up, good. Let's get that out in the open. However, if they are absolutely right and they do prove their case to this arbitrator, that's fantastic too. That solidifies exactly how we should treat things. And I do believe that Major League Baseball has handled things correctly up to this point. And I will reiterate exactly what you said, Jim. Bauer has shown no hint of remorse over anything that's happened. And I think in those cases, you got to bring the hammer down on somebody. A 2-year suspension is great, but let's get this aired out. Let's the third party see both sides of the evidence and judge the case on its merits. I'm all for that.
Andy, Scott's being generous, as Scott does. He's a very generous person.
He's a giver.
He's a giver.
That's what she said.
I don't think that even if some of these acts were consensual, which again, I don't see how a consensual act gets you in the hospital, does get you beat up, gets you choked out. But let's say for the sake of argument, they still are not necessarily the kind of person you want representing the major league brand, right?
Well, of course not. And there's a lot of history about, not the greatest people being the face of Major League Baseball. You can go to Ty Cobb, who was famously a racist. And I know there's been some apologies for him lately about, well, he wasn't that much of a racist. No, he was an absolute horrible racist. Before him, you had Cap Anson, who was a horrible, horrible racist, who was instrumental in the gentleman's agreements being put in place that kept African-American players out of Major League Baseball until 1947. There is a litany of guys over time that are just not great people, but baseball seems to draw a line at, especially now in a more marketing savvy area. You could hide somebody in Cincinnati in 1945, because who's paying attention to Cincinnati in 1945? In 2002, with social media, social media, the internet, the ease of access to information, any sports organization, NFL, NBA, whatever, has real problems with sweeping things under the rug. There is not room for an Oakland Raiders in Major League Baseball, and there's certainly not room for individual players to be Trevor Bauer in 2022. And that's just the reality of the situation. You can't be unapologetically beating up women, even consensually, and still expect to play in a huge media market and make $40 million a year. And I think that's, if there's no other message that Major League Baseball is trying to send, that's the message. I would suspect, as prickly as the owners are with the players union and not wanting to necessarily spend a lot of energy on stuff pissing off the players union when it's not involving the CBA, they've probably got enough of what they consider evidence to stand by their 2-year suspension. And they don't come to that number lightly. That's it is, I think, the longest suspension that's been handed out in baseball for anything regarding domestic abuse. Because I think, you look like Julio Lugo, who there were some issues in the early 2000s. He got half a season of a suspension, and that turned out not to be real. His wife exaggerated some things, supposedly. But that was half a season. We're talking 2 years. So for baseball to get to that point, I think it's a perfect storm of the media scrutiny and a whole lot of proof that he did something that he shouldn't do that baseball found egregious.
Scott, I mean, how much of it is that these administrative suspensions kept being mutually agreed to almost automatically? Like the players union, what does that say? What does that tell you?
Well, that tells me the Major League Baseball shared with the players union, here's what we have. Mm-hmm. Right. They put their cards enough on the table that the union could go, yeah, we do not want to fall on the wrong side of this. And Andy's right. I mean, there's got to be a mountain of evidence. There's got to be a mountain of testimony. They're not going to arrive at that number lightly. And furthermore, you have to look at this when you have something this huge that's handed down. Trevor Bauer's not going to be the last guy to hit a woman that plays Major League Baseball, right? It's just, that's a sad fact. He's not going to be the last guy to do this, no matter how bad you try to end this. Some knucklehead is going to wind up doing this again. So you have to set a precedent now and show where the line is. And that's one of the reasons why I'm all for that arbitrator, because I do think Major League Baseball has a great case, and I do think they're going to prove it. And I do think stuff is going to leak out over time, and we're going to find out exactly, we're going to find more and more and more. And it's going to make people have a sick feeling in the pit of their stomach whenever you hear this guy's name. I think I want that to be proven, however. So the next guy that comes along that does this, there's precedent. We can drop the hammer on that guy too and cut this crap out. That's where I want to see it go.
All right,
This isn't. I'm sorry, but this isn't woke mob stuff either, because I know I've seen some of that online. That this is Major League Baseball's placating the woke mob and going after. I think, matter of fact, I think Trevor Bauer has indicated as such that's part of the reason that's what's going on. This is 100% setting a precedent that we can't tolerate this in the game from our players. I think it's probably a different conversation if it's an owner, and let's be realistic, the owners wouldn't be held to the same standard, but you can't go down the path of what people perceive the NFL to be in the early 2000s with the Ray Lewis and Ray Carruth and all those guys, and I could probably name 5 others. The NFL's gotten better at dealing with those things. Major League Baseball could use the experiences that the NFL has had and how they've dealt with it and expand on it. So again, perfect storm for Trevor Bauer, but the reality is he acted poorly. He acted badly. He's being punished for it. And if you love the free market economy that we live in this country, that's how the free market works. An employer doesn't have to keep paying you when you do things they don't like.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andy, and I think that this is part of Bauer believing his own BS, right? I really do. And why you say, "Oh, this is the woke people." By the way, folks, woke means enlightened, or woke means, a little. We studied a little bit. We have thoughts other than our own. When I think it becomes true.
I think
we have more than that.
Said it yesterday. Overeducated.
Overeducated women.
Oh God.
Which I mean, no, look, that's fair to Matt Gaetz, because we all know he likes them like 15 years old and under. So 9th grade and below is what he's into. Anyway,
I got Venmo.
But I'm also very glad, guys. One of the reasons that Cash App, baby. I do think that Bauer can play that card, because Bauer's a white guy. And honestly, if this is going to happen to somebody, nobody can play a race card on this. Nobody's coming after you because you're a black guy or you're a Hispanic guy or you're Latino or wherever you're from.
Base God is, you're the one that's the most vocal about the things Major League Baseball does wrong. But even that, I think, doesn't hold any water.
Well, then explain to me, if that's the case, then why don't, if Major League Baseball's on some headhunting expedition, why aren't they after a former Astro? Because you guys did all the cheating, right? Nobody else cheated. It was just you guys down in Houston. That's it. So why aren't we after them? No, this is, there's a real thing. There's way too much smoke here for there not to be fire. I don't know. Maybe hockey has the KHL that they play over in Russia. Maybe there's a KBL and he can go play in Moscow or something. He seems like he'd fit in over there, Mr. Bauer.
Okay, 2 quick questions. Well, 2 last questions. One of them is really quick. I had said when this first started, when the 3 of us were on, that I didn't think that he'd ever pitch again. You guys thought he might. So Andy, has your opinion changed on whether or not he'll pitch for in the majors again?
Again, I don't think he can afford. I don't think Major League Baseball can afford to have him in a large market. So if there's a comeback, and what is his player age in 2 years?
34 when he comes back.
Yeah.
He has to come early in 2024.
Realistically, he's on the downside, and I don't care what kind of training regimen he has. He's not going to face major league pitching.
Training regimen, by the way, he's doughy as hell. I'm sorry.
Sure. But you look at somebody like, and I'm not comparing these 2 individuals for any reason other than missing time. You look at somebody like Justin Verlander, who is historically a hard worker and has worked himself back to the point of missing 2 years basically with a Tommy John surgery and having very little ill effect coming back. He's not having the control problems. But even then, his velocity is not where it was. He's not spinning quite as much. He's a very smart pitcher. Trevor Bauer is not going to face live hitting at a major league level for 3 years. Your skills will atrophy at that time, at a time where your skills normally go downhill anyway. Peak player age is 31. So you're talking about a guy who won't play for 3 years if everything is upheld. I just don't know how much value he brings to a major league franchise, because it's not like you can say, hey, we're going to sell tickets just having him on the roster. Matter of fact, you're going to have people that literally don't want to buy tickets to your games because he's on the roster in certain markets. I still think if he makes a comeback, it's going to be a place like Kansas City, and not because they're going to turn a blind eye, but it's going to have to be a smaller market that doesn't have a lot of media presence or media attention, where he can just work on his craft, so to speak. Unfortunately for Trevor Bauer, he has made part of his craft abusing women.
Scott?
Yeah, one of two things is going to happen here. Either he is going to maintain entrenched into I did nothing wrong, no matter what the outcome of this is, and he won't pitch again, but he becomes, a bit of a pariah, but folks maybe on the right side against the woke crowd hold him up as a bastion of someone that was abused by the woke system. That is a very real possibility to me. The other thing is that, he takes some classes, he shows some attrition or some contrition. He says he's sorry. He takes the next 2 years where if the suspension's upheld. And he says, I learned a lot. And if you do that, if you show some remorse, we are a society, we are a country that gives people second chances. And nobody said that Michael Vick was going to be the same after he came back out, but he was still pretty good for a couple of years.
But that's abusing dogs. This is
I know, but what I'm saying is, but if this guy comes out and then there's true remorse that's shown in a couple of years' time heals all wounds, he keeps himself out of the news for a while. Then I think, later on in 2024 in a pennant run, so would somebody, take a flyer on him to bring him in? I do think it's still a possibility. I don't think his career is absolutely shut, but I do think he's got to make some serious changes if he's ever going to pitch on a major league mound again.
I agree, but to Jim's point, this is not a guy who is known for his level of fitness or dedication to the game. He just happens to be blessed with a right arm that does what it needs to do to make him a great major league pitcher.
Which makes you wonder, does he need as much ramping up to be ready? If he doesn't have it anyway, he may still have a couple of years that he could throw 34, 35.
Or he's Johnny Manziel and his demons just destroy whatever talent he has.
Well, that's definitely that's absolutely the more probable route. Oh, show.
Okay. Let's say he ends up doing a year because the suspension gets cut down. He does all his classes and he gets to pitch again. What does that say to female baseball fans? Because to me, it makes me think we don't really actually care about your safety, about your thought, about, we saw what happened with Allison Footer, who was every time, what was his name again, Andy?
Roberto Osuna.
He would pitch, she would tweet out the number to a women's shelter, right? And she was destroyed on Twitter for that. So what would be the message sent to women fans of the game, Andy, if he gets to pitch?
Well, there's not a great message. Ultimately, baseball is a business, and anybody who is willing to sign him has to weigh the backlash that they're going to receive versus the benefit they're going to receive of having him on the roster. You had Astros and you had Blue Jays too, who didn't like having Roberto Osuna on their teams. You tolerate him as a teammate at some level because you don't have a whole lot of choice about it.
Sure.
Ticket buyers have choice. Ticket buyers have choices about, I don't want to support this team. And I think in the wrong market, he could never play in San Francisco. I don't think he could play in New York. I think LA is right there. Again, you're going to have somewhere in, I hate to say it, flyover country, where it's not quite as big a deal. One of those red states, and I know we're not trying to be political, but even then, it's a cost-benefit analysis, and I just don't see there's a lot of benefit for most teams.
And I know, Scott, before we get to your reply, I know, even already, just his personality, he had already pretty much ostracized him from the Dodger clubhouse. And they don't want him anyway. So I who knows if he'll really be able to learn any lessons
I
from
mean,
it.
if you're Garrett Cole, and this goes about to college, but if you're Garrett Cole and you talk like Kermit the Frog, you can't afford to be real picky about who you hang out with and your friends. And he didn't like Trevor Bauer. Alex Bregman loves everybody. I mean, literally, and will sell you salsa. Wouldn't sell Trevor Bauer a jar of salsa.
Scott, any quick last words on just what the message sends to women
the message. So first of all, the message that gets sent right now is this guy's a 2-year ban from baseball. After that, if you want to shut down his entire career, then just ban him from baseball for the rest of his life. Okay, if it's that egregious, and if you really want to send the correct message to women, have the mountain of evidence and say this guy's done for good. If you can ban people for betting on the game when you're talking about moving it to Vegas, and you can bet online or on TV or whatever I want to now. Betting on baseball is fine now, but you got a bunch of people that are canned forever for having done that. If you want to send the correct message, don't just suspend him 2 years. Do it for the rest of his career. However, if he is given a punishment and he serves that punishment, after that punishment is served, is it bad? Yeah. Do I like the message that's being sent to women? No. But can I put myself in the mind of a billionaire who owns a baseball club and tell you what they're going to do to try to get a few more $1 million? No. But my thought is they're not going to fall on they're not going to listen to the social consciousness too much, and they're going to go after the money. And if that means signing Trevor Bauer in 2024, 5, 6, if they think he can help, they'll do it.
And I think to Scott's point earlier, Trevor Bauer owns a lot of this. If there's a comeback, what it's going to look like and where it's going to be. If he can actually, even if he's faking it, and I hate to say that, he's going to have to be publicly contrite about what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought up gambling. Pete Rose is the famous case there. Pete Rose is still not in the Hall of Fame because he wouldn't admit what he did and he wouldn't apologize for it. Right. Because if you read any of the Faye Vincent stuff and going back to Bart Giamatti, they gave him every opportunity to say, just say what you did, just apologize for it. We will bring you back with open arms. And it would happen time after time again. And Pete Rose and Trevor Bauer have a lot of the same mentality that I didn't do anything really wrong, so I don't know what I'm apologizing for, so I don't think I'm going to do it. If he takes that path, it makes it really, really difficult to, again, find the benefit of that cost. If he's contrite, if he apologizes, if he owns up to anything wrong, that's an easier sell. But he owns a lot of that. And you want to call it a second chance? Yeah, it's a second chance. But to Scott's point again, if there's a punishment issued and he serves the terms of that punishment, somebody's going to sign him eventually. I think there's a limited market of teams that would sign him.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right. I just think it still would send, I think it sends a horrible message. It might be a straw that breaks the camel's back for me personally. I think what we, Trevor Bauer is at best a narcissist, at worst a sociopath. So, we'll see. But that does wrap up the Joys of Mudville. Hopefully we're gonna have a little bit more fun next week. We're done with this. And so
I just don't think you could put the word joys right after that sentence.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Hank Aaron once told me.
And South Carolina's role in the slave trade. Columbia has so much.
It's 1, 2, 3 strikes you right at the